Hey, what's up guys, my name is Ryan and today we're going to look at the latest reactor roast by imdontai, the roast of RashadtheReactor. Now before I go on, I just want to let you know I have done a reaction to his roast, both part 1 and 2. So if you want to see them, you can click the annotations here or the links in the description. Now this is my first time reviewing one of his roasts, as I wasn't very YouTube active when he did his previous roast last year. In fact, why don't we quickly go through both of Dontai's roasts right now. The roast of Tyrone Magnus. Alright, overall this is a pretty solid roast. Jokes for the most part worked and had me laughing out loud. However, after watching the roast a couple times, I can definitely see that you were clearly nervous during the roast. And that's fair enough because you were targeting a very popular audience. The length of the video was just enough and it wasn't too short and it wasn't too long. The reactors more or less had the same time amount of being roasted except for CJ So Cool. You could have had a bit more talked on, although at the time he was very new to YouTube and may not have much material to work with. I also like how the roast wasn't made to offend anyone, and I really appreciate that. The roast of Tyrone Magnus gets an 8 out of 10. The roast of Ryan Wright. Overall I thought this was a good roast, however it wasn't as good as the previous roast. I still had a good time, but I felt it was more of a step back. Jokes were still funny, but the main thing that held this roast back is that he tried to make it a lot bigger than it should have been. The inclusion of Mark was, although funny, kind of interrupting and stopped the flow of the roast. And as for King CJ, his part really overstayed his welcome. Also because of the guest, it also resulted in a too long a video than it should have been. Although it didn't really work out, I still appreciate the fact you wanted to try something new for the second roast, and I'm sure you were under a lot of pressure to try and make an equally better roast than the first. The roast of Ryan Wright gets a 6.9 out of 10. Now let's talk about the roast of RashadtheReactor. Now there have been many roasts of the reactors. The first roast of Reactor by Clockwork Cyborg wasn't that great, but when Dontai came in, he definitely, set the standard, and you definitely can't argue that his ones are indeed the best compared to everyone else's. Not saying that the ones at the bottom are excruciatingly bad, but just not as good as the others. So let's see how this roast will be placed on the reactor roast scale. Firstly, let's talk about the idea of Rashad being the main target. Well, I think this is the most appropriate reactor to be roasted. For those who don't know, Rashad was originally meant to be in the roast of Ryan Wright, but was scrapped because it would have made the video too long, as if the video wasn't long enough. But anyway, it's pretty clear that Rashad had the best reactions to the previous roasts.
You're like that last piece of bread that...
No, not the last piece of bread, no.
That nobody uses.
No!
They just throw it in there anyway.
Somebody stop this man!
Another one.
Alright, let's talk about how Dontai hyped the roast. All there was a small announcement which teases Rashad being the main guy roasted, and another which announced when it will be. And there was no trailer and there was no honest trailer voice. For some that may be a bad thing, but for me, that was a sign that Dontai isn't trying to make this too big of a thing. But there was one little thing. He announced it way too early.
Oh my god, I should have never put that video out when I did. I put it out way too early.
I mean, he announced it when he didn't even start it. Though when he announced the roast of Ryan Wright, it was finished.
Alright, this is the first part of the announcement. The roast of Ryan Wright is done. Like, I finished the writing for it.
He announced the roast of RashadtheReactor 3 months before it actually came out. While for the roast of Ryan Wright, he announced it only a month after it came out. Also, before you go type in the comments, yes, I do understand he was having some trouble with jobs. And he didn't have the time here and there, and well, that's understandable. I mean, I have school and exams to focus on as well as YouTube. Next time though, Dontai, when you announce your 4th roast, actually have it finished first. Because if you announce it and the actual roast doesn't come out for a long time, you're just going to make unnecessary hype to the fans, and then we'll just either lose interest or get frustrated. Not gonna lie though, there is a part of me saying that Dontai really just announced the roast just so we can get more Instagram and Twitter followers. I said this before and I'll say it again, it's been 3 months since the initial announcement, and he mentioned in the video to follow his social media for updates. There were no updates on his social media. I mean, he did mention on his Twitter the announcement was coming, but this man literally tweets out all of his videos anyway. Besides that, I didn't see anything else, and there was nothing on his Instagram. Makes you think he only announced the 3rd roast just to urge more people to follow him on his Instagram and Twitter.
No, Tyrone, no! Oh. Nah. Man, what a nightmare. I know what to do. Let me go check my Twitter and Instagram real quick. followers on Instagram. Only 200 followers? What? You know what? It don't even matter. Let me go check my Twitter real quick. Wait, what? Only 50 followers on Twitter. Nigga, I have only 50 followers on Twitter. What? Why do I have so little followers on Twitter and Instagram? Boy. This makes no sense. I'm YouTube famous. Damn, man, I need to find my way to get more followers on Twitter and Instagram. How am I gonna do that? Alright, let me just go refresh the page and there we go. 1,971 followers on Instagram. That's how it should be. Now let me just go refresh my Instagram real quick. Yeah, that's how it do it. 7,379 followers on Instagram. I knew announcing a new rule so that we get more followers. I'm just too good.
For the roast of Rashad the Reactor, he decided to split the video into 2 parts so the roast wouldn't be too long. Alright, well done! One of the negatives of the roast of Ryan Wright was that it was too long, and it became tiring to watch. So let's start with part 1. Alright, so even though there wasn't any guests in the roast, that isn't entirely true, as for the introduction of the roast, we have Zilla98, who is voiced by imdontai himself, roasts imdontai. So for the introduction, Dante basically roasts himself. Thing is, after Dante's first roast, other people started to roast him, but except for Marks and Jor-Els, none were actually any good.
I'm seeing people make roasts that are dedicated to me, and it's, to be honest, it's trash. Like, there's no effort, there's no trying, they're just saying mean stuff about me, like.
So I guess Dante was like, screw it, I'm gonna just roast myself.
Dante the type of nigga to drop a roast on him damn self. And it'd be better than the rest of ours, bruh.
My opinion, the inclusion of the Zilla98 was a smart move. You were still able to include a guest, but in your way and your style. The reason why having Mark in the roast of Ryan Wright didn't work was because your kind of humor is very different. If you have 2 different kinds of comedies with different humor, it's not going to execute well when you perform it. It will just be confusing, so well done on Zilla98. Okay, for Akasan. For me, this was actually the weakest part of the roast. Don't get me wrong, it was still good, but you know, just having to see Akasan's speech on the top 20 reactors of 2015 was slightly boring and could have been cut down a bit. Becky Boop's part was also good. I feel like you could have had maybe one more joke about her, as it was a tad bit too short, but overall it was fine. You roasting Flight Reacts was definitely the highlight of the roast, and you went in on him, and I don't blame you as there was so much to roast on Flight. Obviously the laugh had to be roasted and it was done brilliantly, and the part when you went into flight mode was priceless, mate. Priceless. Alright, so the Knights part. I thought it was a smart move to combine the Knight and Anthony Knight together. I mean, there isn't really much left to roast about the Knight, and Anthony Knight doesn't really have any material to work with, but you did manage to find something for both of them, and combining them together was a smart move. Now about Tyro Magnus. Not gonna lie, whenever you roast Tyro Magnus, man, it never gets old. Especially when it's about women, because what you did with Tyro Magnus and Miss Jackson was pure gold genius. However, when you were talking about Tyro Magnus and Grade A Underway, the joke was a little underwhelming, and I think you could have came up with a better joke about the situation to make fun of. At the end of the roast, we see a clip of Blasphemous HD laughing, and then it cuts to a part 2 coming soon screen. Firstly, I think it's good that you split the video into 2 to avoid the roast being too long, and the fact you put Blasphemous in there makes the viewers anticipated for more and wonder what Dante will roast about him. Now part 2 of the roast was supposed to come out a week after part 1.
Tell us when part 2 is coming out.
Oh my god, yeah, everybody's gonna be asking that damn question, but I'm hoping to have it up by
The fact that he hoped that the next part would be done for next week shows that the second part was not completed. In fact, part 2 didn't come out for another 2 weeks. Like I said, finish it before you announce it. Lastly, this is just a nitpick by the way, but I kinda miss it when you were roasting in your garage. Like, I know you have your own place now, but going back to your mum's garage to do the roast would have been nice. Anyway, let's look at part 2. Alright, so in part 2, there is no intro or anything. It literally goes straight into roasting Blasphemous HD. Dante be popping in all kinds of characters in this, and it's hilarious. Straight out the gate, he roasts this guy's eyebrows and hairline as well. If you can see that hairline, that is. After Blasphemous, he then goes to Gator from the Sopdo Bros, to where he roasts how Gator tries to whip. Though his section was hilarious, there was a big missed opportunity, man. I don't know if you remember, but when you reacted to my top 10 reactors and background history video, when I showed Gator's music video, you were literally gobsmacked. Yes, I'm not even kidding.
Nigga don't know the words, bruh.
Music videos.
Whole lot of ways in this world, which one to choose? Whole lot of curves on this girl, oh I'm confused.
Oh boy.
Having that music video in the roast would have been awesome. I mean, even people in the comments said you should have it in the next roast. Willpower's part was also good, but nothing mind-blowing. I mean, it wasn't much of a memorable part of the roast. I mean, maybe that's because I'm not familiar with this guy, or I don't know. But for what you did say about him, it was fine. Demon Killer Scorp's roasting part was, to be honest, the weakest part of part 2. Because for me, I didn't find what you had to say very funny or interesting. Maybe if you said something else about him besides his rap video or something, we get to see a small section of Ryan Wright to where he was on about his rap. I guess Ryan Wright's part was small because maybe Dante's had basically said everything he had to say about him in the roast of Ryan Wright. After Ryan, we went to CJ and So Cool, and that's great because we haven't seen Dante roast CJ since the roast of Tyrone Magnus. And even then, Dante didn't even say much about him. So now that it's been a while, you think there'll be some more jokes for Dante to spit at CJ, right? Well, yeah. In fact, CJ's part was also quite good. Dante went at CJ's obviously fake prank, which was brilliant, and the part where he zoomed in on Royalty's armpit hair was priceless. And finally, RashadtheReactor. Oh my gosh, did Dante go in on Rashad? He did not hold back. He roasted this man's chalk lips, his weight, and this man's feet, and everything. There was no chill, no chill. However, one thing that was seriously not needed was your little deep message at the end after the joke about Rashad having no editing. For me, I think it really interrupted the flow of the roast. I feel like if you cut that part completely, it would have been better because the video overall was 18 minutes long. That's almost as long as the roast of Ryan Wright, and it didn't even lead up to it like a big joke or anything either. Also, I just want to ask, why did you change the roast format in part 2? Like, you couldn't be bothered to actually record yourself, but just got a sticker review instead. I mean, you did it in part 1, so why not in part 2? I'm sure there's a sophisticated explanation for this, like, oh, I don't know, maybe your camera broke, or your tripod broke, or you're just trying to meet a deadline, so you just said, screw it, I'll just do a picture of me instead. Like, if it's not a good reason, then that's just lazy, my boy. Oh, allow it, man. Like, man just wants, like, what you were doing before was fine. Why are you switching it up? Don't switch it up, because you're gonna flop. No, but seriously though, I'm all in for you trying to do new things, but having your roast like a stand-up comedy was a staple in your roast. Like, don't change what works before. Oh, and guess what this guy said at the end of this video?
Make sure you follow me on my Twitter to keep up to date with anything else that I have planned. My Instagram as well. Everything will be in the description. I will also put it in the comments.
Boy, if you don't get...
To be perfectly honest, I do think that part 2 was definitely not as great as the first part. I feel like it's like another roast of Ryan Wright, to be honest. That wasn't as good as the last roast. And I feel like you could have gone a lot harder on pretty much everyone in part 2. But both of them combined, the roast of RashadtheReactor is actually probably the best reactor roast we have to date, placing it at the top of the reactor roast scale. If it was just based on part 2 alone, then it will probably be placed below the roast of Tyrone Madness, but because part 1 was so great, it gives it a big boost. I give the roast of RashadtheReactor an 8.5 out of 10. So this has been my review of the roast of RashadtheReactor. Dante, if you're watching this, I hope you take my opinions into consideration for next year's roast. Oh, and to my viewers, if you haven't seen already, do check out my own roast to Leon Bourne. my combat roast after he roasted me. And I definitely had inspiration from imdontai when making it. If you guys enjoyed this review, make sure you like, subscribe, and peace!